And speaking of home improvement, one of the things that's happening around these days is a lot of home improvement that's going around on your landscaping and things around your home in general. So we wanted to bring in our friends over at Sure Dry Basement Systems, and we've got Nick Rayner on the phone, who is the sales manager. Hey, Nick, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Bill. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Well, let's talk first off about Sure Dry. This time of year, we were just talking before we went on the air. The weather always affects, obviously, your business. And one of the things that has been going on lately is that we've had some real dry weather, and then we've had some torrential downpours, which certainly can do a number on your landscaping. And in particular, one thing that you guys do that we want to talk about today is concrete lifting to repair the concrete that is going on around the home. First off, we've all experienced it. If we're homeowners, we've all experienced the unlevelness of concrete. You know, you had it in there, it was perfect, everything was great, and then all of a sudden, it doesn't look quite right. What happens there? What is going on there?
Sure. So, great question. So, concrete typically settles or shifts for one of three reasons. The first is going to be the oversaturation of the underlying soil. So, we simply, say water plus dirt equals mud, right? So that would be the oversaturation, and that can even include erosion. As water moves underneath your concrete, it can erode or take that soil away, causing that concrete to settle. Second reason would be the opposite of that, and you kind of mentioned it. It would be the undersaturation of soils. And geographically in this region, we deal with a lot of clay-based soil. And those clay soils, when they're wetted, they expand, and they do the opposite as they dry. They shrink. And when they shrink underneath your concrete, it creates voids. And those voids allow that concrete to settle right in, and that can cause some unevenness, some tripping hazards, some pooling water, things of that nature. And then the third reason is just poor compaction during the construction process. So the contractors, when they build homes of any era, they move a lot of that soil around, creating a layer of fill soil over the top of maybe the native or virgin soil. And as much as they try to compact that soil during the construction process, they don't inevitably do as good of a job as Mother Nature does over, hundreds or thousands of years. So over time, that layer of fill soil just begins to compress into place, and that too can cause a lot of concrete to shift and move, especially in these newer subdivisions where we see we'll go into and we actually end up doing a lot of work, house after house after house, because that concrete moves around so much after the construction process.
Great stuff. Sure Dry Basement Systems, Rick Rayner here with us. Nick, what is the solution here? Because you are talking about concrete lifting, where in the past, when you see your concrete cracking or unevenness, you're talking about a huge job of, taking the concrete out, leveling the ground again, putting probably gravel and soil down again, and then laying that concrete all over again. But you have a pretty neat process in concrete lifting. Talk about that process and how it's different from having to replace it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess first and foremost with concrete replacement, what homeowners often don't consider right out of the gates is even if you were to replace all that concrete, you haven't addressed the root cause of the issue, which is the underlying soil, right? So I joke around with the homeowners that I work with and just ask them what the definition of insanity is. And, most people say, well, it's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that's kind of what you get with concrete replacement because, again, you're not addressing the root cause of the issue, which is that underlying soil and the oversaturation and undersaturation of that soil. So at Sure Dry, we work with a very unique product. It is proprietary to us, so it's our own technology, and it is a foam material that we actually inject underneath the concrete. Now, there are other methods, traditional methods, such as mud jacking, things of that nature that maybe contractors who don't specialize in this type of repair would use. But at SureDry, we do use a foam product. It's called Polylevel, and it's one of our flagship products. And this foam gets injected underneath the concrete, so we'll drill, tiny, dime-size holes, or even a touch smaller in the concrete, and we'll inject this foam below the concrete, and a number of things happen. So there's about a 7-second reaction time with this foam. There's an A part and a B part, so there's two different sides of the foam. They react underneath the concrete, so when they're injected, they flow very viscous like water into all of these voids, and they react and they begin to create this foam. And as this happens, it does a number of things. Number one, it will actually compress and push down any of those underlying soils that are poorly compacted, and it will lift and level that concrete back to where it was supposed to, back to where it was originally and where it's supposed to be. It's very precise. We control it, very exacting tolerances. And it does a number of things. So it's waterproof, so it won't dry out or shrink or degrade or wash out or anything like that with any sort of moisture. It's actually a hydrophobic mixture, which is fairly unique for a 250 compound, which just means it weighs 2.5 pounds per cubic foot. Most 250 compounds are not hydrophobic. And what that means is if the compound does experience any water or moisture underneath the slab, it will not be diluted. And the reason that that's important is because if you use a common foam, a lot of people think like Great Stuff or something like that. When that encounters water, it actually dilutes the compound and it reduces the structural integrity of the product, making it so that it's not as resilient. It won't hold up as much weight. So that's kind of the first step of lifting and leveling your concrete. From there, we move on to, the control joints, the lines in your concrete, sealing those up. A lot of people don't think about those, but that's actually a major source that water enters the soil underneath your concrete. Those lines are meant to control the patterns of cracking in your concrete, and when they do what they're supposed to do, they allow water to run right, in between the two pieces of concrete right to the soil below. So we seal those up with, again, a proprietary product called Nexus Pro Joint Sealant, which is a silicone-based caulk, and that will stop any water from entering those joints. And then we have a myriad of other products available as well. Sealant Pro to seal the top of the concrete there to stop pitting, flaking, and spalling, as well as a new product that we've recently released called Resurface Pro, which is a concrete resurfacing product. So for people who don't want to have to replace their concrete, we have the ability to now actually make their concrete look like new again. And that's a polymer cement.
Concrete lifting and concrete resurfacing is what we're talking about. And is this, when you are done with this, does it still look like concrete? Because you're not removing any concrete, except maybe some loose pieces and things along those lines. The concrete is still staying there, right, Nick?
Correct. Yeah, the concrete still stays. A lot of times what we run into is that we love to tell people, hey, your concrete's in relatively good shape. It just needs, a little bit of love here and there. So, instead of ripping it all out and replacing it, we can make it look like new again. We can lift everything back up to level and then put a new surface of polymer concrete over the top of it that's quite often more resilient than traditional concrete itself, which is an aggregate mixture, right? These polymer cement is a mixture of polymers and cement. We can resurface it, and then we even have the ability to proactively protect areas of concrete around your home that haven't begun to settle yet, so that you don't have to worry about, reactively correcting that settling concrete issue.
Is there a point where you are beyond repair with this kind of process? Or, obviously you want to catch it early, but sometimes you let things go. Is there a point where you go, we can't help you? Or is any situation worth fixing when you're talking about this concrete lifting and resurfacing?
Yeah, it's a great question, Bill, and one we get quite often. So we tell homeowners that we're looking for concrete slabs roughly 3 feet by 3 feet in area, right? Anything smaller than that, it does begin to be a little bit more challenging to control the lift on. So, these smaller pieces of concrete that have broken out, or when your concrete really starts to turn to kind of more gravel, things like that,
Yep.
those areas we're not able to help out with. So we definitely like to see slabs that are bigger than that 3 feet by 3 feet area.
Okay, so I'm going to take the homeowner's view here. I'm going to be a little bit pessimistic and doubtful, if I can, for a second. And I'm sure you've seen this before, so it's not going to be anything different, right?
Sure.
But how do I know as a homeowner that when you fix it, it's going to be fixed for good and not go back to where it was before? You've got this new process, but how do I know it's not going to crack and need resurfacing again?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a number of things. First and foremost, we, again, are addressing the underlying issue, right? The root cause of the issue, which is the soil. Most people, unless they work kind of in this field or work with concrete, they're not actually familiar with the fact that the reason you're seeing the issues is because of that oversaturation, undersaturation, or poorly compacted fill soil, right? So we are addressing that issue right out of the gates. So that's kind of the first layer of defense. And then the technology that we use is proprietary. It is tested across a network of foundation repair contractors like ourselves in North America, Canada, and other parts of the world. And so we've got about 150 other dealers like ourselves, kind of upper echelon foundation repair contractors utilizing this technology and essentially poking holes in it, right? So we know, not just from a small sample size standpoint, but from a large sample size standpoint across the entire country, that these products work. And then we back it up with our warranty. So if your concrete were to shift or moved after we have come in and done this, a quarter of an inch or more within 5 years, we'll come back out and fix it for free.
That is awesome. That is awesome. We're talking with Nick Rayner. It's Rayner, right? Rayner?
It's Rayner. Nick Rayner.
Nick Rayner, sales manager of SureDry Basement Systems. We're going to talk a little bit more about this and how you can get in touch with Nick and his team and get that done. But we also want to talk about other things that SureDry Basement System does. We'll do that right after this.